Again, we're off to an amazing start, a very inspirational start to hear about the future. Going forward, the most incredible story, one of the most incredible stories that we have heard, and truly a pioneer in the aviation industry in Saudi Arabia, in even the space industry. A part of its creation was done partially by our next speaker, Your Royal Highness, Prince Sultan bin Salman. Please give me the biggest round of applause to hear a 1-hour talk from Your Royal Highness, Prince Sultan bin Salman.
Good morning again. So, you give a pilot 1 hour, I mean, that's a big mistake to talk. So, I don't know what to do, to start by bragging or by...
Let me brag for you. So, mashallah, tabarakallah, I'm sure Prince Sultan does not need any bragging, and I'm sure all of you know him. But one of the, most historical making events in the world was when Prince Sultan participated and went to space and became a payload specialist in 1985, correct? And he stayed there for 7 days in space. Prince Sultan, mashallah, tabarakallah, has made history not only in the aviation industry, but in all industries that involve risk-taking activities because of a bigger sake, because of a bigger goal. I want to thank you, first of all, for everything you've done. And I want to thank you for all of this energy that you gave to the entire Saudi nation and to the entire world as well. Prince Sultan was the first Arab to ever go to space. Aside from that, Prince Sultan has had multiple contributions towards the tourism industry in Saudi Arabia, towards the aviation industry in Saudi Arabia, and aside from all of that, he is the founder and chairman of the Saudi Aviation Club. Prince Sultan, I don't know where to start. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. But I believe, did I brag enough or should I keep on going?
No, I'll do the bragging myself.
I can keep on going as well. Prince Sultan, I'm sure we can take 5 hours, not just 1 hour. But I believe one of the first items of discussion is we all want to hear about your journey into space. And aside from that, how did it change you after you came back to Earth?
Well, thank you very much, Adwa. I'm very glad you're here. And I want to thank also now my friend Saud al-Wa'lan, if you could stand up, Saud. Saud contributed this fantastic hangar and other things. Saud is an aviator. I call him the truck driver because his family started in the Wadi, hauling dirt to farms and doing businesses that were in the early years. And so no matter what he flies, I call it a truck driver. I call him, where is your truck? Where is your... So Saud is a good friend, a great aviator, and Fahad, his brother, is here, who are really been the forefront of general aviation. Like I said, you know, you give a pilot a microphone and tell them to talk about themselves. You know how many pilots we have here? We can have like 6 days with these guys bragging and taking credit for everything they did do and didn't do. Of course, pilots, you said, I'm taking risks. We never take risks. You know, pilot never take risks, right, Ken?
Calculated risks, is that the word?
Head of the civil aviation sitting here. We never take any kind of risk. But truly, my life has been imprinted by aviation. Maybe I should start with a story that relates to the space mission.
Yes, please.
This story is published in my book, 7 Days in Space. It's a true story. In 1969, as small boys, Fahad, my late brother Fahad, who was my mentor, Allah yarhamah, or myself went with my father, who is now King Salman. And then we went to the first graduation of the King Faisal Academy for Air Force. At that point, I used to see my father. My father became a member of, he wanted to be in the military before he was appointed sort of an interim governor of Riyadh by his brother Naif and King Saud, of course. And then he thought he was going to do 3 months in this job and then go to the King Abdulaziz military academy. That's a true story. King Salman wanted to be a soldier. So we have our Egyptian friends here. We fought with Egypt during the war for the Suez Canal, with the three powers trying to occupy it. And we fought defending ourselves from Egypt in 1962. That's when I used to see my father wearing his volunteer military clothes and going to training with King Fahd and the younger princes those days. So I wanted to be a soldier. But 69 was a turning point for me. When I went to the graduation and I saw the lightnings. We used to have these lightnings and these fighter jets. And I saw the first graduates of the Air Force. That's it. That was a defining moment. I didn't want to be a soldier. I wanted to be an Air Force pilot.
And mashallah, you became one.
Well, I'll tell you, the story is very strange, actually. I tell the story a lot in schools because people sometimes, some things happen to you. You may think they're the wrong thing at the time, but if you give them time, if your intention is correct, something better is going to happen to you later in life. And I'm sure all of you have had these things happen to you. So we got out of the graduation. King Faisal was there, a great man, a grand man. We sat in the car in the back seat, and I put my hands on the front seat from the back, and I turned to my father and I said, "Sir, I don't want to go to school anymore. I want to be an Air Force pilot." He paused for a minute. He said, "You know, all my life I wanted to be a soldier." He said that. So he said, "Why don't you finish your middle school?" And then the military college here used to take kids who are to finish high school in the military college. And he said, "If you get the grades, you can be an Air Force pilot." Those days, there were no Twitter, Facebook, anything like that. So I went to Riyadh, the smaller Riyadh those days, and I roamed all the streets telling people I know or I don't know that I'm going to be an Air Force pilot. Well, fate has a different plan for me because I got hit by a virus that hits children, sort of a rheumatism kind of thing. So I literally froze all my joints. You know, this man that you see climbing mountains and running and doing marathons and things, I literally was almost like frozen. So I couldn't move anything. It's a virus that could have killed me.
Your Highness, this happened overnight?
Yeah, it happened when I was in second and 8th grade. So this virus could have killed you as a growing boy if I didn't treat it or if I exercised. So literally, my plans were changed. I was told I spent a year in bed. I was allowed to get out of bed once a day, being carried around. People don't know that. So I don't know how I ended up even with the disabled causes here, because that mentally that has nothing to do with it, but maybe it's fate to pay back for getting well. So my plans to go to the Aviation Academy changed until 1974. I've always wanted to be a pilot. So we were sitting the night before we left, and those days, the parents and mothers were not used to their children traveling to the US and going to school the early years. So sitting with my father and my late mother and my brothers, and we were saying sort of a good night, a goodbye night, having dinner to go to the States. And my mother was really sad. We're going away for such a distance. We're going to Santa Barbara. So I said, as soon as I come to the States, I'm going to learn to fly, just small planes. So my mother said, "No way, don't do that." And my father said to me, he said, "Do what you have to, and later she'll be convinced." And there is a great story for her, because women, to me, is not a new thing. Remember, I spoke about that on TV very bluntly. I don't think Saudi Arabia would have been a country today without the women of Saudi Arabia.
Of course.
Truly.
Of course.
And I grew up in an environment where women had played, and still do, a great role. My daughters, my nieces, and all that, they're all excellent in schools. They're all people like yourself. And the women of Saudi Arabia will surprise people who think that they need to be introduced to the world. Women in Saudi Arabia are already ahead of the game, really. So I went to the States. Fate has it. We went to California, to Arizona. Anyway, I ended up in Denver. And I called a friend of mine, Saud, and I said, "Find me an instructor, flight instructor." He found me a gentleman called Jack Metter, who passed away. And the first day we met Jack, my late brother Fahad and myself, and another gentleman who also passed away, Fahad al-Dosari. Ken knows him very well. We went and he put us in a Cessna 172. So I was supposed to sit in the back. So I said, I'm not sitting in the back. I want to fly.
That was your first,
My
your
first,
first flight
first
ever.
flight in a small plane.
1972?
76.
76.
So I said to Jack, I said, look, I'm going to wait, take my brother and the other gentleman, but when they come back, I want to spend a lot of time with you and see if this is for me. While I waited in the airport, Ken remembers the gentleman, a gentleman named Ivy Simmons, who was actually a guy that started the airport, and there was a Cessna flight school there and so on. He came to me. He was sort of a cowboyish kind of look. And he said, are you waiting for Jack? I said, yes. He said, do you want to go fly with me until they come back? I said, sure. So he put me in a biplane. You know what a biplane is? A plane with two wings, open cockpit. I'm from Saudi Arabia. I've never seen this before in my life, not even the movies. So he puts me in the front. He said, there is no communication between us. It's a true story. And it's published in the book. He said, there's no communication between us, but if you feel anything, do this. I'm in the front. I didn't know what he was talking about, just a plane. So we took off, and I had a big head of hair. And as soon as we took off, it's a biplane with a tail wheel, and took off, and I didn't even know what happened. And then he flips the airplane.
Oh, wow.
So
Your
I'm
first
hanging
flight.
with the straps. If I changed, what would have changed my mind about flying? That would have been the moment. I was hanging with my straps, looking down, and there are cows and power lines, and
Oh, my God.
and I'm trying to put my hand on my head because I'm feeling, I didn't know if the belts will hold, so I'm doing this and I can't. So he started doing loops and rolls and
What were you doing at that time?
just
were
keeping,
your hands here?
just keeping quiet and
Praying.
and hoping this will end soon. But the story I'm coming to, we landed. My hair looked 10 times bigger. We landed, and my brother Fahad came, and Allah yarhamu. And then he said, "What are you flying this?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How was it?" I said, "Great. You should try it." I think my crime was to tell my brother to go fly because he went. First of all, he lost his glasses rolling, and he didn't like the experience, and that was it for him. He said, "I don't think I want to do this anymore." So that was a big mistake. But anyway, I continued with Jack Metter, and flying and all of that. I want you to stand up, if you don't mind, Perwez. Captain Perwez came with a great guy, Salim bin Laden. He was he was just a great aviator. Sit down if you like. And I landed one day from a solo flight. I soloed at 9 hours. And I didn't think there was anything to the books. I wanted to fly, not study. That's why I failed my written exams twice.
Like a true pilot.
Absolutely. And I soloed at 9 hours. Salim bin Laden landed in a Hawker, a jet. So somebody came to me and he said, there's a guy named Salim and his people in a Hawker, and he wants to see you. So Salim is a good friend. He's a crazy aviator. He passed away, but he's a great guy. I mean, I wish he was here. Sit down, Captain Perwez. He had this guy with him in 1976. So they put me in the cockpit, left seat. They started the airplane. They said, go ahead and take off. That was a big mistake because from that flight onwards, all I wanted is to fly a jet.
Nothing else.
Ken told me one time when I told him, we need a faster plane. He said, look, no matter how fast you go, you will always want a faster plane. So after that, I had my ambition to fly faster planes, helicopters, and so on. So this gentleman, if you can stand up, Ken, if you can. Ken has been a mentor to me and a great friend until today. We still restore airplanes together. We still fly together. We roamed around the world in airports that you cannot imagine, unlit airports, night flights to islands, changing direction in midair. I remember, Ken, one time we leased a Learjet, and we landed in California to visit my brothers. And Ken said to me, what time do we take off back to Colorado on Sunday? And I know Abdulhadi would like that story because he can use that same sentence. I said, well, around 5 o'clock. He said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to be ready at 5 o'clock. The airplane will be ready. And if you don't show up, I'll wait 15 minutes. And if you don't show up, I'll wait some more. So I use that when I talk about bigger people than I myself. But from that onwards, and the story is being told now in a great book, I hope that will be published. It's called My Life on Wings with David Hipschman. Where's David? He's here, I think. He's interviewing people. He's Dave.
David.
And I think
know.
the book, you have to believe everything in the book. There is no bragging, no lying, nothing, you know.
Is that a wink I just saw between you
It's
two?
coming, it's coming, inshallah.
When is the book going to be published?
But
inshallah?
the story is that aviation story, moving to jets, Ken got me involved, and helicopters, and Ken remember stories when I left him in the middle of the desert in Colorado. He went to pick up a parachute for the FAA, and the helicopter, and then I just took off and went and left him, among other stories. What happened is that, now we're talking about 1969, when I hoped I'd be an Air Force pilot. Space mission. The space mission came, the coincidence was, I was in California in 1983, and I was invited. I was working on an airplane project, an airplane designed by Bill Lear. So I was working with his wife, Maya Lear. They called the Lear fan, the airplane. A fantastic airplane, very fast, 400 knots plus. So I got involved in the test pilot program. So I used to fly with Don Madonna and the test pilots and so on. But then the project stopped because the oil prices tanked. It was designed to be very efficient. First composite airplane ever. Now everybody's using composite. So this is really ahead of the curve. And it has 2 engines, 1 propeller in the back, a pusher, and that thing just went crazy. I mean, the airplane is fantastic and well done. So I went by chance to visit Northrop Grumman to convince them to come and invest in this, I think, and other people. Then I went by coincidence, I think it's Grumman, who was doing the simulator for the space shuttle. This is really a true story. Before that, we were in Denver with some friends, and we learned the space shuttle is being carried by a 747, if you remember this story. So we went to Denver Stapleton International Airport at that time. We went to the parking, 4th floor of the parking, the car parking, and we watched the fog. And about 200 feet, 300 feet, we can't see the airplane. We can hear the commentary. And then you can see the 747 nose coming first, and then all of a sudden, there is another thing on top of it, the space shuttle. And that was John Young and Bob Crippen, and they became friends, the first shuttle astronauts. As soon as they landed, when I went to Grumman, and I said, they told me there's the simulator of the space shuttle. This is way before the space shuttle mission. I said, this is how things work in life. So I flew the simulator. I landed it very well. So that was the story. But in 84, end of 84, the space mission story came, and I got involved with Air Force pilots and so on. And then they chose 3 people, and the whole story is being told. Finished the space mission, which is a great mission, really, and enjoyed it very much and learned a lot from it. Saw the perspective of this very small planet that we keep fighting each other for,
The blue dot.
thinking that everybody's living in a different planet. That's why in the Space Commission now, we have a program called Generations. And I was speaking to the kids yesterday, Generations.
Ajiyal. Yes.
And the kids are our friends that we brought from all grades to advise us how to go for this in the future, saying to them that space is technology and medicine and all these good things, but when you go to space, your perspective changes completely about this very small, fragile planet. And I'm not just talking environment, I'm talking people, I'm talking, and the world is changing today with social media and you see more of the world today. So the hope is the next generations will take the transition to make us all look at each other in a different way. Let me go back to 69, and now we're talking about 85 to finish the story.
Which is
16
year, yes.
Yeah, 69 is when I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. Now, by that time, in 84, I was already a full-fledged pilot, flying jets, flying small planes, big planes, the Gulfstream 3, I think at that time I had the type rating, the Learjet, and all that stuff. Ken has been really a very important part. I've been going to flight safety schools, and became an aviator, not just a pilot. This is the difference now, an aviator. Aviators brag a lot more, of course, but they enjoy it a lot more. So, 85, King Fahd sends his plane, or a government plane. Very nice 707. And I wish the pilot that flew us was here because he's still alive and well, alhamdulillah. We fly to Basel from Houston after we finished the mission, a couple of weeks, briefings or whatever, or a month. The whole science team we had, and my backup, Abdulaziz Bassam, don't know if he's invited or not, he should have been. And then we land in Taif, in the western part, in the summer. The government used to summer there. This is an amazing story. This is 1985, 16 years later. I get a call in the plane from King Fahd, who used to call once a day or twice a day to check on us and this. And lots of stories are told in the book. And he says, I want you guys to come out of the airplane with your spacesuits. At that point, I didn't even know King Fahd was going to be in the airport. Big reception. So here is a 29-year-old pilot telling the king of Saudi Arabia, sir, maybe we should be wearing our Saudi clothes, to look better. He said, no, I think the space closed, but do whatever you have to, he said. 30 seconds later, the phone rings on the plane, and it's my father saying, the king orders you to wear your spacesuit. This was the first time the king ordered me to do anything. So he was right, because people were expecting us to come out in a blue color, not. Yes. When we landed, my boss, because when I flew in the space mission, my boss was the Minister of Information and Media, Ali Sha'ar. He just passed away 3 months ago. Allah yarhamah. Great guy. He comes up on the airplane. I look from the window. Of course, when we were flying in, again back to the Air Force, I see these F-15, 5 or 6 F-15s. They were just coming into Saudi Arabia, escorting us in the Saudi airspace. And I have pictures in the book that are just, this to me was a very touching moment because I wanted to be in the F-15, not the 707.
So now they were saluting you. They were following you.
And the thing is, they were saluting us. We landed. My boss comes up, big guy, Ali Sha'ar, great guy. He was military, ex-military also. Came and gave me a big hug, practically broke my ribs. He said, the king is here, all the princes, all the ministers. My mother was there also on the other side with a lot of big reception at the airport. And he was telling me that you're going to be going in this open roof car, going around Taif, which we did. This is astronauts and people who fly into space have an aura of some sort, inspiration. So I think the biggest thing about this mission is the inspiration. But look at this moment now. He pulls a piece of paper, which I'm still trying to find. He pulls a piece of paper, and he said, this is a telegram. This is 1985, 16 years later. He pulls a telegram. He said, the king had just, without me knowing about it, had just appointed you a captain in the Saudi Air Force.
That's an amazing.
That is an amazing moment, and I froze. So, and captain in Arabic, ra'id. Ra'id means, an astronaut, we say, Ra'id al-Fada mean astronaut, when you combine two words. So they chose the word Ra'id, and it was actually my level, in the sense of, my level in the government, and that was and I just froze. So I started my conversion program in the military, and I was in the Gulf War, flew F-15s, flew Hawks. One of the guys that I trained with, Awad, where are you? Awad was my trainer on the Hawk. And Muhammad Al-Aish was, before the space mission, the Minister of Defense, Prince Sultan, was kind of biased to the Air Force guys who were submitting their names for the space mission. So he said, all the tests I did, medical tests in the King Faisal special hospitals for 3-4 days, people would see us coming in, don't know what's going on, He said, no, take him, because I was the only civilian, take him to Dahran, the Air Force, and give him the business. So they put me in an F-15 with now the assistant of the minister, who's assistant of the defense minister, your brother, Muhammad Al-Aish, and he put me in an F-15. We have some picture. I don't know what happened to the pictures. And they put me in an F-15 doing air combat maneuvers, ACMs, for 3 days, pulling 9Gs, doing everything that could really, really break you. And 3 days of medical checks until they figured that, it is going to take a lot more to break me. And that's basically how I became an Air Force pilot. And I spent until the mid-90s being an Air Force officer fully. And of course, the Gulf War came and I served in the Gulf War and so on. So this is how these cycles in life happen.
Yes.
So to me, I would not be the same person today not having been an aviator. I fly everything today. My plane, the plane I fly is a Gulfstream 550 as a captain, ATP, airline transport pilot with first-class medical certificate. But I fly this one, the Learjet. I fly small planes. And I got back in love with small planes when I went to Oshkosh. This show is our first attempt of the Oshkosh of Saudi Arabia. Then I started meeting great people, really. People sitting here, Rod and Joe and Paul. Where is Paul? Paul Claus? This guy, you see, lives in Alaska, and I went to him in '86. Ken and I flew a Learjet 50 feet off the ground, all over Alaska.
Not risky at all.
And I spent, I'm not going to talk about that, that one. I don't want to lose my license. But we spent time in Alaska flying everything. And I went this year, and we spent 4 days landing on glaciers and ice. I fly in Saudi, land in the deserts, land everywhere. And it's really been a fantastic experience, restoring airplanes, living the aviation world. I would not be the same person if I had not had that window in life to aviation.
And I truly believe that. I mean, just hearing about this, I feel like we've been through the same journey. And just a quick note, I mean, Your Royal Highness, you mentioned that perspective of the blue dot, right? The small planet changes you psychologically, changes you mentally, changes you even spiritually, I believe. And there was a recent documentary that came out, and it was called One Strange Rock. They bought 9 astronauts, and they wanted to study what changes in the mind of an astronaut once he sees that small dot. We would love to hear more about the spiritual, mental, and psychological effects after when you went to space and you realized how small of a planet this is.
Well, first of all, the mental issue, when you talk about pilots, you can get a lot of jokes about their mental
Absolutely.
including my daughters. I hear from them every day. You know, my house is also dominated by great women, like Abdulaziz said. But yes, it does changes your perspective. Not just seeing the blue dot. I can tell you, when I'm flying either in the Gulf Stream, crossing the ocean at night, I have my iPad, which has the stargazer thing, and I put it out on the window and I check which stars and what. Or when I'm flying low level, even over Saudi Arabia, my friend Long, where is Long? We were flying over the end of the world, escarpments here, and it's just an inspiration. You cannot believe the moments. Sometimes I believe I learned how to fly so I can sit in the cockpit. You know, so I can sit in the cockpit and I see the view. You know, when we did the trip around Saudi Arabia with this one of the gliders, that's mine.
Arabian Wings, right?
Arabian Winds.
Yeah, beautiful.
You can find it on YouTube, actually. Arabian Winds, W-I-N-D-S. And we have one of the great guys that taught us how to do this. And where is John Bailey to stand up, please?
John Bailey.
Here is John Bailey. John Bailey is a great aviator in all sense of the word. I'll get my check later, John, okay?
The documentary was amazing.
John is really one of the more... See, what I learned also is, and I'll go back to the dot, is these people, those great people that I flew with and I fly with, no matter what you see in the facade and the joking and so on, we get into the airplanes and we become aviators. You know, I learned how to build organizations. The Tourism Commission and Tourism and Heritage Commission today is considered tourism and heritage the biggest sector, growth sector in Saudi Arabia.
Yes,
everybody's singing about it today. Yes. When we're saying to people that's what's going to happen, and we were working hard with all the obstacles ahead of us, people were not thinking that this is going to be anything meaningful. Today, Saudi Arabia is going to be a big tourism and heritage economy.
And Your Royal Highness, you had a large role in that.
Not just myself, really. As a pilot and aviators, we work together. Yes. Like Abdulaziz said, and I liked what he said today, my friend Abdulaziz, is that we work as teams, men and women. Yes. So John has been our guide on this. We had a big team. Captain Zakaria, where is Captain Zach here? There's Zach. He was flying the chase plane, the Twin Otter. Jack is a good friend. We flew together so much. And Prince Bender, bin Khalid al-Faisal, the third pilot, he's coming tomorrow. And
we have a presentation. Tomorrow, inshallah,
we'll do the presentation. And I have also a friend, two glider pilots. One is a world-class glider pilot, Klaus Ullmann. Where is Klaus? Klaus, are you here?
MashaAllah,
Klaus flies at 50,000 feet in a glider.
I just have to say, I saw you breaking the world record and you flying a glider on top of Everest. And I have to tell you, that is amazing. And we're honored to have you here.
Klaus and I in the Alps, we had an interesting landing to say. I'll show you the pictures later. With the glider, 2 pieces. Yes. But Klaus, I learned a lot from him. And I learned from Monsieur Doucet. Where is he? Can you stand up? René, s'il vous plaît. René Dosset, my French is fine, but I manage, and he doesn't speak English. So when we glide for 7 hours, somehow we communicate.
How?
But merci beaucoup.
MashaAllah.
René Kaman, pilot in the Alps. I think you go check him out when you
Yes.
go to Charles Zelot.
Yeah.
There's one guy I want to introduce you to who sold me my very first airplane. It's a crooked operation in Seattle, But Brad, would you stand up, please?
Who? The first airplane, MashaAllah. What
Bra-
is the plane, طال عمرك?
A Cessna 414, and we just found it. And it's actually more expensive than when I bought it.
Oh, wow.
And somebody put up the guarantee, and I had to borrow it with the bank. I still work with Brad on several airplanes and different things, So we're still, in spite of being a crooked operation, we're still friends. Brad is a great guy, really. Decent and honest and to the hilt, So Ken just located the 414, so one day maybe we'll see if we can get it. The Blue Dot and the space mission, we were all eager. The launch is really awesome. And we spend about 2 hours waiting in the space shuttle. And in the space shuttle, when they take you, they do a test launch, how to exit and how to egress. I knew none of that stuff is going to work. I knew we were going to go, But when we went to the first time, we all had a bunch of coffee and said, so when you sit in the space shuttle like that, the actual space shuttle, before the launch.
I have the video right here, yes.
That's it, yeah.
So when you move,
When you sit, this chair will be back like this, and you're sitting, and basically all the fluids come to your stomach, and you need to go and relieve yourself. We didn't know that the first time, so it was a very tough experience. The second time, I was fasting because of Ramadan, the last day of Ramadan. So I fasted the whole month of Ramadan, and now you see kids talking about exams in Ramadan. That's going to be difficult this year. When Ramadan came in Houston, sunset was like 10 o'clock in the evening or something. We told NASA, I said, I'm going to fast. Anybody volunteering? My backup, I told him to volunteer. He was ordered to volunteer at the mess. He's a great guy.
yes. And
So a bunch of us fasted. And NASA said, okay, you can fast for 3 days. And we're going to check you out, your health. But we're going to give you also 9 o'clock to show up to work. We said, no, we want to show up to work exactly at 7 like every day.
we don't want any special.
We're not going to break our program. We'll exercise. So we'll go through the whole day fasting. We were much sharper.
And you lost a lot of weight.
And we lost weight.
Yes.
But we ate one meal because we slept. As soon as we ate the meal, you're supposed to eat a meal late night. Right on the sofa, we're doing books and reports and so on. Ken used to come and visit, and I go flying around. Fasting was good for us. And when we did the test with NASA, the medical center, and when the medical center, when the first time we went to do checkups, the three of us, there were 3 candidates. We came, Riyadh, London, Houston. They checked into the hotel, and we were really just tired. There was a great lady named Lynn Collins, in charge of the astronauts. She was ready. And in the United States, if they say the war is World War III, they say, who's going to bring the coffee? Coffee is very important.
Yes.
So they took us in a room with cookies and coffees at 1 o'clock in the morning.
This was prior to.
This is prior to everything.
Launch.
Before nobody knew anything. We were supposed to do checkups and do interviews and then go back to Saudi. 24 hours. And when we went to the meeting room, we were really just yawning, tired. So they make us sit for an hour for briefings. And they said, we'll see you at 6 o'clock in the morning. Then I knew why. They wanted to see how we behave medically and mentally and so on, with a little sleep, with lots of flying. And those airplanes before, the cabin altitude is like 8,000 or 9,000. Next day, we went to the medical center. We did a lot. We were just walking around with shorts. And there were parts of my body I didn't even know existed until those medical checks. I sat down with the mental evaluation, the psychology thing. And in the States, they have this habit. You sit with somebody and they put their feet in your face in the office. In Saudi, that's a no-no.
In Saudi, it's
So I put my feet up. And the guy was eating a Mars bar. And by that time, we only allowed to have water, no breakfast, just water, because of blood tests and so on. So he took me for an hour, a mental evaluation. I talked as much as he wanted. When we finished, he turned on all the lights because there's a small light. And I said, are we done? He said, yes, we're done. I said, would you mind if I ask you a question? He said, and it doesn't go on the report. He said, yeah, sure. First of all, I said, give me a Mars bar because I'm really starving. Second, I said, what are you looking for? You're looking for people who are not crazy, more or less. He said, yeah, we're looking for people who can assimilate with the crew, who are not going to panic or behave, when you have emergencies, and this and this and that, not going to create problems on the space shuttle, that sort of thing. So I said, you think somebody is going to take off in a spaceship that's made by 15,000 countries with 2 million pieces, with two engines, each is 500,000 pounds of thrust, compared to the 747, 50,000 pounds of thrust. And it's just small, like a DC-9, with 2 rocket boosters, each with 1 million pounds of thrust. Do you think somebody would do that? It was not crazy?
That's a very rational question.
He said he loved that story. So he said, you're probably looking for some people who are a little bit, But, the launch is amazing, of course. I actually had a nap while we're waiting for the launch, maybe 15 minutes, just to relax after we did all the things we needed to do, calmed myself and relaxed. We were eager. I was asked by someone once, said, were you afraid? And I said, people are not afraid, are actually crazy.
Yes.
In Saudi, we think people who are afraid and they go forward, like soldiers, like my grandfather and the people that unified this country with him, when they one time went into a fort in Al-Hassa, where the Turks were there. He started climbing the rope, and one guy pulled him down. His son is with my father now, his grandson. And he said, if you die, this is all over. Let us go first and open the gate for you, and you come in. Because my grandfather was in the forefront of all the wars, all the unification wars. He wasn't sitting behind, iPad and telling people what to do.
Room. No, he was out there.
Like 170 hits with swords, and one time his stomach opened, and that story, when his stomach opened, hit by a sword, they went back to camp, and the news was that he was bleeding and he was dying. So here's what he did, just an off the case. They used to marry a lot. This is part of unifying the tribes and bringing. So he actually, in Al-Hassa, asked for the hand of a girl in Al-Hassa, the tribal chief. And the news was he was getting married tonight, because he wasn't. The doctor who did his thing is somebody I met who only passed away a few years ago, Dr. Midhat. And he said, when we came to him with anesthesia to sew him up, he said, don't do that. Go ahead and put my stuff inside, sew me up. And he had a thing that he grabbed. Tough guys. So the news was, and they made a big celebration, and the dancing that Abdulaziz, he wasn't king those days, was getting married. But the story he told, that when the girl came in and they would come covered and so on, he sat with her, he said, excuse me, but I am like your brother today. He was totally, and the news was he's getting married, and that whole thing went away, but so we believe that when, I really wasn't afraid, maybe that was stupid or I was young. I was actually afraid not to fly.
That was your real fear.
That really biggest fear.
And
anyway, the space shuttle,
sorry? It was in your blood, from your grandfather.
Well, all of us, genetically speaking, Saudis are why they're excelling today in technology, in medicine, in architecture, of course in aviation, and all these fields, men and women, because this is a genetic conditioning. The arts you see today, fantastic things happening throughout this history of this country, 300 years.
Definitely.
The engines would start, they start gimbling, checking, and then the rocket boosters would start really shaking. And then, they blow out the bolts. There are bolts holding the space shuttle down. You can see them being blown away. And then when you take off, the space shuttle has to turn, because the launching pad was for the moon missions, so more northerly. We were going at 38.5 or something inclination to the east. So it goes like this, turns. But really the fun starts when the space shuttle starts. So we're hanging with our heads down. There is more than 3 Gs. I used to fly 7 Gs or even more, or with Art Scholl, one of the greatest, the guy who did Top Gun aerobatics, and died while doing it. He crashed while doing it, and the footage is that spin. It was actually a true spin. So we used to do 9 Gs, but this is 3 Gs sustained.
Yes.
So your head is down, all the shaking, and then the acceleration. Then you have the Gs on your stomach, and literally you think you're going to die because of the breathing. So we're trying to get a breath, in. So
They
it goes
teach
on
you-
for a minute plus.
They teach you how to breathe exactly at that
Yeah,
moment,
it's
right?
because of the fighter aircraft. Because we flew fighters also at NASA to train for this.
Can
And,
we repeat
you
the
know-
video again of the takeoff?
Anyways, the space shuttle spends about 9 minutes or so to go into orbit, lower orbit, and then we still have to do the little engines and push it. The faster you go, the higher. We were about 1.2 million feet up in the air. So the guys who brag about the Gulf Stream going 51,000 feet, I've got news for them.
It's no longer a threshold.
But the moment you asked about, when we're like this, and then we finally lose the rocket boosters, and the engines are still pushing, then it's an amazing moment. Very quiet. Acceleration has already stabilized, and we're in space, and we're really going fast to anchor at the orbit, and of course go east. We used to see 16 sunsets and sunrises every single day.
Oh my God.
So if you like sunsets, there you go.
Oh my God, that's amazing. 16.
16. I don't know, Joe, my friend, Joe, can you stand up for a minute, please? My
Joe
friend
Clark,
Joe Clark,
everyone.
great guy, great aviator.
A pioneer in the aviation
I go to
industry.
Joe to visit him in his ranch every year, and a beautiful place in States, in the United States. And one time I was sleeping at 6 o'clock in the morning. I look out of my window in his main ranch, and I see a helicopter, right next to my window. He goes to me, let's go.
That's your alarm
That's the
clock?
best alarm clock I had in my life. So Joe and I and friends, we'd fly all his planes, more or less, 20 or 30, from one plane to another. You really have to like airplanes to go to that on that trip. And Rod, of course, has twice as many airplanes, and he was a racer. Rod, can you stand up, please, for a second? Rod is a Reno air racer. He restores airplanes, and these are great people who have their own businesses, have families, and enjoy life. So basically, the moment comes. The space shuttle has upper deck and lower deck. Lower deck is very small. It's a lot smaller than this place, a lot, but
The
half the
space
size.
shuttle.
And we're 7 people. So Patrick Baudry, the Frenchman, and myself and John Fabian were down, and then we had Shannon Lucid and late Steve Nagel, great guy who passed away with skin cancer. And of course, the 2 pilots, J.O. Creighton and Dan Brandstein.
It was a total of 7 astronauts,
Seven,
right?
seven
Yes.
limited space. But we can transition. You don't want to talk about the bathroom facilities. You really don't want to touch that one because it's another story. You would not be able to live 7 days with 7 people in such very confined space unless you had 0G. So some of us used to work in the ceiling like mosquitoes, and some of us will. Anyway, the moment came when the commander, Don Branstein, said, go ahead and take off your helmets. These are pressure helmets. You need them because of the sound and the noise of the takeoff, the launch. So we took off the helmets and then let them go. And then you see a little bit of nails and screws, all the shaking just floating. So they teach you how to to float away from your seat, to unbuckle. If you do this with the wall, you fly very quickly. So we kind of got some training in what they call the vomit gommet, the 747, the 707, which does parabolas and things. And there are pictures of that. I know these guys come up with the pictures. Then he says, come up. It's very important that people come up and orient themselves. The space shuttle flies, I can't say upside down, because in space there is no upside down. But we're flying like this. So Earth is always, we can see Earth. And we can also, on the other side, charge the solar panels. The space shuttle has 44, I think, small rockets that will orient it in space and speed it up and push it down. And also for return to Earth, those are very important. But they're not operating because in space you're really going at 18,000 miles an hour. I started with Joe, and his beautiful airplane is back there. He just did a record from Florida to Riyadh in 13 hours and 46 minutes.
46 minutes, yes.
I think his crew, where the crew? Please, the crew stand up. The crew who made this happen with Joe.
And we have Captain Joe Clark to speak
There's
after
one.
this. Yes.
Tom, where is the other ones? Hi, Travis. Who is the third one here? Where is yourself? Who is missing? Who is? Where is Mark? Mark is flying? Got my ear. It's good because I can grab your airplane. It's even better. But they just did the trip for the show. So I want to announce that today. This is a world record.
They broke a world record, yes.
Broke a world record. Maximum altitude, I think 48,000. They ended up incremental. It's a lot of planning for this. And they just flew. And they loved the Saudi air traffic control.
Really?
I am the proudest person
Mashallah,
of Saudi ATC. And I did a message one time. I think it's on our website now. Those men and women, my first experience with a Saudi women ATC going to Al-Ula the other day, absolutely right on the money. And I recorded her. I recorded her for my daughters. I'm the last guy to ask about these issues because my experience with my sister and my two daughters and my nieces, which I oversee, are the top universities in the world, Cambridge, Oxford, and they're engineers, they're psychologists, and then now they're doing masters and PhDs, and of course our sons too. So that's not strange to me, you know. We were at the Disabled Children Association, the first organization, public organization, nonprofit, to let women become board members, go into the elections and become board members. And they're the best people that we have in our organization. This was, by the way, this was 10 years ago, before it became fashionable.
It was far ahead.
At the Tourism Commission, and now at the Space Commission, some of the ladies are here. You need to talk to them and see, like Abdulaziz said, there is no gender issue here. You need to talk to them and see.
Yes.
Hala is one of them, and these smart, reliable women who also raise families.
Yes, and that's the hardest job in the world.
My children have a mother who is a PhD. She's
Mashallah,
an associate professor at the university, excellent in her work, and does all these things, and yet still oversee her two daughters and Salman and so on.
And that's what's so fascinating is they always say the hardest job is running a company. No. The hardest job is being a CEO of a family.
You know, my father and my mother used to call us, and still do, every day. And they were busy. I'm very busy, man, with a lot of things, a lot of organizations. Not a single day that I don't talk to my children, my nieces, my sister, and my grandchildren. I have two grandchildren. The daughter is 4 years old, Aya, and I think she thinks she can run the world by now, ready to go, and her brother. So it's really fantastic to be in Saudi and to be relaxed in the way we build this country and continue to build. This country has always been in a state of flux.
Absolutely. And
you go up in the upstairs, well, you float up. And Dan Brandstein, a great guy, and of course J.O. Creighton, J.O. looks at me and he says, Sultan, look. So I put my face to the small upper windows, and of course the earth is down there. And it is a view that you can never forget.
Ya Allah.
It's a view that shows you a very small, I know this has been said a lot, but let me say it a different way. You see a small planet, all the colors in the world,
Yes.
and then you see this darkness. It's a light shift that makes it darkness, almost dark blue, and it hits you.
Ya
I can see the stars and everything, but it hits you. We're here alone.
Ya Allah.
You know, so that's why the rhetoric I hear from politicians and so on, until today. It's like almost like today, people talk like we don't have internet and Netflix and Apple TV, and we see documentaries about wars and how much blood has been spilled throughout history. You think we became better. You think we became much more educated. A little girl today or a little boy can actually go to the net and see disasters and can see things that can happen to people. This is not, I'm not being a green or being a liberal or being this. I'm actually, politically speaking, right in the middle of all kinds of things. But it is really a very small place. So we had a press conference one time in space. At that time, there was an explosion of an airplane, TWA, in Beirut. And a New York Times reporter asked, while he was in space, he said, sir, I don't know if he said sir, but he said my name maybe. He said, looking at terrorism in the Middle East, he wanted to focus that, and this and that. What do you think? I said, well, terrorism is all everywhere today. And if I had a thing to say, I would make it a required thing for every politician and leader to come into space, spend a day, look at this view before they go back to Earth. Of course, I had a few politicians in mind, And then mentally, I was saying to come back to Earth, but mentally saying some of those guys Just
They should go up there.
stay
Yes.
there. You know.
Stay there, don't come
Released
back.
into space. we would be better. Would be better today if we did that too. You know, all the crazy stuff that happens today, all the arrogance and the grandizing and so on. We need people that can build this world and can put people together, and it's going to happen with the generations that we're looking at today, who are connecting, who are traveling, seeing each other, making life. I'm very advanced in the sense of IT and all that. My tourism organization was #1 in Saudi for years. I fix my own stuff, and hardware and software and all that. I fly very complex airplanes. I stay ahead of the game because I don't want to be looked down by my own kids, you know. But the point is, you see that view and you keep moving, because those days when we flew, we had fires in Africa, droughts, about 50 fires. So Africa was engulfed. Then I saw how people asked me, how did you pray? So of course I was fasting that first day.
And
John Fabian came to me.
And you bought the first date to
Well,
space,
we brought
right?
Medina dates. It was favored in NASA, and King Fahd kept sending them, so people loved them and got us into places. It was a good bribe, the Medina dates, you know. But I was looking at my country, flying over it, and every 90 minutes, I don't mean to deflate the record flight for Joe, you know, from Florida to Riyadh in 13 hours and 46 minutes, but the space shuttle goes around the whole world, once every 90 minutes.
Oh my God, wow.
So Joe's trip would have been 15 minutes.
I'm sorry, Captain Joe, I'm sorry. It's no longer a world record.
That's why Joe, if you remember the 650, the Gulfstream 650, with Hamish, I think the gentleman who flew it, and he asked me, he said, I'm taking 2 astronauts, you want to come on the trip and break a world record? I said, I already have a world record.
In the entire world.
So to see the world coming, changing, you see storms forming, these amazing colors. You see deserts, and you see forests, and you see ocean. Your mind. So I was asked a question in the press conference, and here's what I said without thinking, truly, because it's very inspirational what you see. I said, what do you think of the view when you saw Earth from space? So it really hit me. I said, well, first day or so, we were pointing to our countries. This is my country. By the third or fourth day, literally, we were pointing to our continents. Do you know Saudi Arabia is in Asia? That's why where is Long? Long is here? Is Long here? Long is a great guy I fly with. There's a lot of fun to fly
And
with.
an amazing photographer as well.
He's amazing. Go to his website. Somebody asked him, what's your website? Yesterday he said, Hot Asian, which is not. His website is Long, what?
I believe he also has a Facebook page under
Anyway,
his
get his
name.
website and see the pictures of Saudi Arabia.
Yes, and they look amazing.
I said, by the third or fourth day, we were pointing to our continents. You know, really, I said, but by the fifth day, and this all came very quickly, we were looking at one world, one planet. I really didn't.
Goosebumps.
And to prove my point, when we came back to Saudi, and after all the celebrations and things for the team, I think Saudis were celebrating themselves. We were in a period where building airports, infrastructure in the 80s, pumping money when the oil prices went up, and so on. And Saudi Arabia was building like crazy. So people were busy, they forgot there was an education thing that was going on. When I was in the States, there were 26,000 Saudis in universities. You know, we started early. Life didn't start yesterday. So this flux situation of Saudi Arabia building over its history has always been the case. So if we stop, we're not us anymore.
That's very true.
See. So I just kind of, after the celebrations and everything, as King Fahd asked me to, I see him, of course, all the time. So he said to me, I want you to go around all the countries that are represented in Arabsat. Arabsat is the satellite organization. By coincidence, they just finished a new building in the diplomatic quarter, and we took it over, which is amazing. So it was like built for the Space Commission.
And perfect timing.
And you should visit. I want our guests to visit the Space Commission, this like a spaceship kind of building. So I took with me in space a bunch of things from my grandmother, from my father, my mother, and so on, a lot of things. And then we made those astrolabes. Arabs have invented this space stuff and al-falak, يعني اللي هو cosmology and all that. And then we took these astrolabes. These are, in aviators, we used to call them confusers. Guys who go to, and women who fly, They don't have to do what we did with these slides, you know. We call them confusers. Now they have these iPads and computers and, you know, all the stuff there, applications. So he said, I want you to go to the Arab countries and lecture and speak and give them all their present that came from space. So I loved it because I get to fly a lot in the Gulfstream 3. So I flew a lot. But the amazing thing is that every place I went, people had the same questions. What did you feel when you went to space? How does it, until today. So I still speak in schools. I enjoy speaking in small schools. I take my helmet. And one of the things I do, kids wear it, pick them up. I pick them up if they want to, and I turn them around, you know, just, and it's really very inspirational.
And that's how a space shuttle feels like.
Inshallah.
And you are absolutely true. I mean, there is a different aura when you, I mean, I can see it and I can feel it just sitting next to you. There is a different aura from someone. And even though it's been 7 days, but I'm sure it's an everlasting effect that stays within you.
I started to say, when I started the first trip, I went to the States to meet President Reagan, a man I've always admired. You know, I'm not affiliated to anything, but I liked Reagan. He was just somebody who did what it takes. So King Fahd asked me to go meet him, and we got it all set up. And there's a stop in London, just a break in London. So I'm used to being in the space shuttle, going around the world once every 90 minutes. But guess what I forgot when I went to London? My passport. Because I figured, you know, I don't know, mentally I'm saying, you know, there are no more borders.
I'm a global citizen.
And those borders, by the way, are fake.
Yes.
They're all in geography books and outline and so on. You go to the States, you see the Panhandle, and you see the Tri-States, and you see Colorado and New Mexico, and, you know. But really, they don't exist, to me at least, until today. So there's a guy here that is a joy to fly with. Captain Tahir, could you stand up for a minute? Captain Tahir Alam, who I didn't recognize yesterday. When I saw him, I absolutely didn't recognize him. I love the mustache.
Is it the mustache?
It's all new to me. But Captain Tahir and I borrowed an airplane. And when we landed in Geneva, he said, his boss said, before you leave, take permission if he needs the airplane anymore. I said, really? He said, yes. So it was Mr. Hariri and Mr. Nasser Rashid. Nasser Rashid still, by the way, now asks me for the bills, you know, for the fuel. So we took the airplane for a month and plus. We went all over the world. So Tahir, I haven't seen him for a long time, so we invited him to come over. Yes. Great pilot. And the Bach 111. So this is, you know, what I fly weekly. I still look at the world from the same perspective. The views that you see, the people you meet. Aviators are a special breed.
Yes.
Regardless of anything. When I go to Oshkosh and 700,000 people, one of my daughters said, how do you control 700,000 pilots? You know, it's well done. In the US, they do things right. Yes. And that's what the culture here at Saudi Aviation Club, if we're going to do it, it's going to be done right.
Absolutely.
So it is the joy to go and talk to people who are grounded, people who enjoy life, who have a different perspective. And of course, you go to space and we do hope. And I'm going to say today, two things. I thank Abdul Hadi, and we're going to hold him to it. That's why I clapped, so people remember it, about the fees. You know, but I think the fees is the thing that's going to take the news. But I know, I can't always speak about these things, a lot of development. And we're working together, but his leadership, a lot of development in the general aviation stuff. And I told Abdul Hadi today, some of these guys sitting here, including Ken, would be a really great asset to maybe organize a meeting while we're here, if you don't mind. Bring your committee and people. I will meet with them in my hangar. Ken will be here, and some of the guys who fly general aviation will be here. And let's do that. Let's do a flush-out meeting. I said this is a growing thing in Saudi. Saudi is the most beautiful place, one of the most beautiful places in the world to fly. And it will make flying a lot easier. One time, I remember Zach, I had a gentleman from the desert who lost 3 camels or 4 camels. Normally in Saudi, if somebody tells you that, you say, Abshir bil-awad. I'll replace them for you, just out of gesture. Well, I didn't want to do that because camels are very expensive. So I said to Captain Zakaria, I said, I'm going to send you a gentleman yesterday. Take off. If he tells you to go north, go south. He's a Bedouin guy who thought he knew everything. And he's been looking for his camels every day, and he was sad. This is a true story. Zach is here, well, he left. Remember the story with Ben Mijfil. So I had a caravan, Cessna caravan. So he goes, he takes off, and the guy tells him, let's go north. That's where he thought his camels are because of the wind. You know, the Bedouins will tell you these things. Wind and this. I lived all my life in the desert. I have camels, my own camels, the white camels. And I'm telling people, whoever wants to stay longer, we're going to go see the white camels in the desert and enjoy the desert for a day. And we're going to set this up. And kiss the camels on the nose. You come to my farm, Saudi, Ken did it, Joe did it, and his picture is all over the net. I made
saw the picture, yes. And we're going to see it
I think we should have
now.
it here.
Yes, and we're going to have it again.
And we should put it, but you know, Rod hasn't done it. A lot of guys haven't done it. Travis did it, I remember, and did a long one too. So he goes south or east. The guy tells him to go west, and Zach goes east. And the guy got angry. He said, why do you go east? He said, Prince Sultan, Prince Sultan. Guess what?
He told me the
it
opposite.
took 10 minutes to fly east, the opposite the direction where he thought his camels were. And here are the camels walking. So I saved, you know, I spent $500 on fuel as opposed to 500,000 riyals on replacement. So there's a role for the airplane here because it's a vast country. And we do these fly-ins now. And you should see the spirit of the Saudi pilot and the people, the pioneers, you know. So this is a pioneer. This show is so critical.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm very proud of people that have transitioned to aviation. One of them, Mishal. Where Mishal? Is he here or gone? Where Mishal? Mishal Sudairi is a relative and a cousin. Mishal is an engineer from one of the top universities in Saudi and Dhahran. And he has been an avid, he actually established the Saudi Auto Club. What you see today, the racing and all the safaris and all that across the deserts and stuff, he's the man behind that whole thing. And when we did the desert things, you know, race car racing and so on those days.
On a motorcycle.
Mishal now, I asked him to do a book about his transition. Because there was a Saudi general who's a pilot, had an amazing book. It's like the 10th printing now. He called it From Bicycle to Airplane. Mishal came up with a great title, From Wheels to Wings.
Oh, beautiful.
And if you want to see an aviator that is dove is the word, head first to transition. I mean, all I hear from Mishal now is airplanes. He spends hours, like I do, on the iPad looking at airplanes. So you have a creation of so many aviators. And of course, we have the women aviators who went to the school here, and now we're creating the academy with the Aramco and Saudi and others. And I want the minister here to give us the permission to start work, to build the academy here. Because the money is there. It's a big agreement with the University of North Dakota.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a fantastic thing.
I feel like we need 5 hours, right? I don't want this to finish.
You don't want me to talk for 5 hours.
Wallah, we do. But unfortunately, we have to bring this session to a close because, mashallah, Prince Sultan, we are filled with inspiration. We are filled with, honestly, the feeling of wanting to just go on a plane and fly right now and even go to space.
Well, I want to just close by really thanking the Entertainment Commission, the Sports Commission, the Tourism Commission, like I said, the military, the Air Force, my guys, you know, who brought the Typhoon and brought all kinds of airplanes. I don't know if they're going to give me a ride on the Typhoon or not.
Can I come too?
I've been promised one. And all the Saudi pilots and the Aviation Club members who brought a lot of airplanes. We have today, just if you allow me to brief quickly, the governor of Riyadh, very avid, Prince Faisal, who took my father's job after 2 other people after that, but who is a very busy man, but he always comes here. The king himself, when he was governor of Riyadh, came to the Saudi Aviation Club when we launched, so he's still a big supporter.
We have the picture right over here.
We have pictures here. Still a big supporter. And then today the governor is going to come in, we're going to see the show, and inshallah we will have lunch, a big lunch for the guests, and then we see the air show. And enjoy it. And of course, tomorrow we have more Hangar talks.
Yes.
And I want us to really make sure people also know about that because these are great things and great stories. I would suggest that everyone, from the guests who are pilots and their friends and spouses and children, and Abdulhadi and others, why don't we all come here for a photo op with the background? Absolutely. I think that wasn't planned. فهلا والجماعة get the drone in. If you don't mind.
Yes, you want to do it now?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we should do it now, if you like, because we have time. We were supposed to have the Emirati astronaut come.
Yes, and we have Captain Joe Clark as well.
Of course.
Yes, and
Joe,
we
you're
want to
gonna
hear
speak
about the
today?
world record as well.
Joe is going to speak today?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I better get
inshallah.
out of the better get out of the room.
2 pilots.
Joe, remember this is Saudi Arabia. It's not Oshkosh. Can we have like a little string? When Joe starts going out of the outer line, I can just pull the string.
Of course, we'll manage that.
Joe is a great guy. Great aviator.
He's incredible and mashallah, a pioneer in the aviation
He's
industry.
now over, I think, is about 70 or something, but going on 15.
70,000.
And going on 15.
MashaAllah, tabarak.
That's how
MashaAllah.
you have to think.
He just showed me a picture of you and him and the camel, and he was introducing me to the picture. He was like, "This is
And
my
the camel.
girlfriend."
Well, Paul, Donna's wife, and his daughter are all aviators. The whole family. His mom is
MashaAllah,
90.
that's
Your
beautiful
mother is
to
now
see.
90. Sorry? Oop, that's a big mistake. 86.
MashaAllah,
And she still runs
MashaAllah, tabarak.
marathons, living in Alaska. So
May God bless you.
Yeah.
Ya Rab. All right.
Thank you very much.
We
Appreciate
can
it.
definitely do a picture
Yalla, Sharaf.
if you would allow us.
Can we get everybody now?
Yes, we can do it now, but
And then Joe speak?
yes, I would much prefer if we have
Okay.
Captain Joe and if we can then do the
Joe,
picture.
come
Yes,
up.
but thank you so much,
Yes,
Your Royal Highness. This was such an inspiration, and thank you a million times over. Captain Joe Clark, hello. Wh-
I'll take a picture with you, with this, with you here.
Yes, of course.
صور صور بسرعة. أحمد.
You know, flashbulb damages. Cumulative. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I will.
Yes.
Okay. I'll follow your lead.
Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness.